The tension was palpable from the moment Will Smith stepped onto the stage of Jimmy Kimmel Live. The crowd erupted in cheers. Of course, this was Will Smith, global superstar, Grammy-winning rapper, Oscar-winning actor, and Hollywood icon. But behind the wide smile and the enthusiastic wave, there was something in his eyes, a flicker of discomfort, of restraint, perhaps even irritation. It had been a tough few years for Smith, whose once untouchable reputation had taken a battering. In the wake of the Oscars controversy, while he had done his best to move forward, releasing new projects, going on apology tours, granting carefully curated interviews, there was an edge to him now, a defensiveness that lingered just beneath the surface. Jimmy Kimmel, known for his sardonic wit and no-holds-barred approach to celebrity interviews, had made it no secret that he intended to get real with Will. The promo for the episode had teased a conversation you won't want to miss, and social media had been buzzing all day with speculation about what topics might come up. The slap, of course, was unavoidable, and while Will had tried for years to distance himself from that singular moment, tonight it would come crashing back. The interview began on a light note, as most do. Jimmy cracked a few jokes about Will's fashion choice, a bold lime green soutane. Will played along, flashing his signature laugh and charming the audience with a few anecdotes about his latest film, an ambitious sci-fi thriller about parallel universes and identity crises. But even in these early moments, there was a hint of friction. Jimmy's jokes were a bit sharper than usual, a bit more loaded. He made veiled references to other dimensions where certain slaps never happened, prompting laughter from the crowd and a tight smile from Will. Smith responded diplomatically, saying he was here to promote the film and wasn't interested in rehashing old drama. But Jimmy didn't take the hint. Instead, he doubled down, suggesting that Will's new role was an ironic one. Considering his own real-life identity crisis, that was the first time Will's expression visibly darkened. The audience laughed nervously. Jimmy smiled like a cat who had just seen the mouse twitch, and Will leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, his body language signaling discomfort that was quickly sliding into irritation. Still, Will held his composure, pivoting back to the film and praising the cast and crew. But Jimmy wasn't done. He brought up a recent podcast where Jada Pinkett Smith had spoken candidly about their marriage, suggesting that Will's emotional honesty had become a meme in itself. He pulled up a clip of the infamous Red Table Talk episode, the one where Will sat stone-faced as Jada spoke about her entanglement, and replayed it for the live audience, who let out a mixture of gasps and awkward chuckles. Will looked at the screen, his jaw tight. "Why are we doing this?" he asked, half joking, half serious. "I thought we were talking about the movie." Jimmy smirked and said, "Come on, Will, you know that people want the real tea." Will shook his head slowly. "You're crossing a line, man." But Kimmel was relentless. "I'm just saying," he continued, "you've been in the spotlight for decades. You've faced aliens, robots, vampires, but has anything been harder to survive than your own PR team?" The line got a laugh from the audience, but Will wasn't laughing. His demeanor shifted, his body leaned forward, and for a moment, you could feel the air go cold. What happened next was a slow-motion unraveling of the conversation. The kind of thing that makes producers backstage panic. Will responded not with anger, at first, but with intensity. He spoke in measured, deliberate tones about the burden of being a public figure, about the mental toll of having every intimate moment dissected and memed. He talked about trauma, about legacy, about the difference between vulnerability and exploitation. The crowd quieted, sensing the shift. This wasn't entertainment anymore, this was personal. But rather than back off, Jimmy pressed further, suggesting that perhaps Will was deflecting, that he hadn't truly taken accountability for his actions. "You've apologized." "Sure," Jimmy said, "but have you really changed?" That was the matchstick. Will's face hardened. "You don't know me," he said. "You know the headlines. You know the late-night punchlines. You don't know the work I've done behind the scenes, the healing, the pain. You think this is a game." Jimmy shrugged, still playing the cool host. But the tension was no longer containable. From the sidelines, crew members began exchanging frantic glances. The studio audience was dead silent. Will stood up slowly, mic still clipped to his jacket, and said, "I came here to talk about my art, about the work, not to be ambushed." Jimmy tried to interject, saying it was all part of the format, that it was just jokes, but Will wasn't having it. "Nah, man," he said, "there's a difference between a joke and a jab that hits below the belt." At this point, security and producers began moving toward the stage, unsure of whether to intervene or let the moment play out. Jimmy, sensing he may have pushed too far, tried to pivot. All right, let's get back on track," he said, gesturing for Will to sit. But Will just shook his head. "I've done enough sitting and nodding and taking it. I'm done." And with that, he unclipped his mic, handed it to a stunned crew member, and walked off stage. The audience gasped. The cameras didn't cut away in time. The image of Will Smith, walking off Jimmy Kimmel's set, back straight, eyes blazing, was now seared into the memory of every viewer. What followed backstage was a mixture of damage control and chaos. Jimmy's team huddled immediately, debating how to edit the segment tour, whether to air it at all. Will's team issued a quick statement, saying the actor had been disrespected and baited, and that the appearance had not gone as agreed upon. Social media erupted. Clips began circulating within minutes, spliced with commentary, hot takes, memes, and support from fans who felt Will had been goaded and provoked. Others argued that he overreacted, that as a public figure he should have expected hard questions. Pundits weighed in. Twitter trended with hashtags like #WillWalks and #KimmelClash. The talk show world, usually so polished and predictable, had erupted into raw, unpredictable reality. And in the middle of it was Will Smith once again, the center of a storm he never intended to create, yet somehow couldn't avoid. In the days that followed, the fallout was immense. Jimmy Kimmel opened the next night's show with a monologue that tried to make light of the incident but also walked a fine line of half apology. He acknowledged that perhaps the interview had veered into uncomfortable territory but maintained that it was all in good fun. Will Smith, meanwhile, released a calm but firm video addressing the moment. In it, he spoke about boundaries, about the importance of choosing when to speak and when to walk away. He admitted that his emotions had been raw, that the years of scrutiny had taken a toll, but he emphasized that he would always stand up for his piece. The video was met with widespread support. Celebrities chimed in, offering solidarity. Jada reposted it with a simple caption, "He chose dignity." For Will, the incident became yet another chapter in a very public evolution, one marked by vulnerability, missteps, and now, a decision to disengage rather than explode. What made the entire episode resonate so deeply wasn't just the clash of personalities, but the cultural undercurrent it represented. It spoke to a broader fatigue, exhaustion celebrities feel being endlessly dissected, and the fine line talk shows must walk between entertainment and exploitation. In a world where everything is content, where every personal confession becomes fodder for virality, Will's walk-off wasn't just about a joke gone too far. It was a stand, a declaration that not every stage, not every laugh, is worth the cost. But sometimes, walking away says more than staying and smiling. Jimmy Kimmel, who had long walked that tightrope between satire and cruelty, found himself facing serious questions about the ethics of his format. Did pushing celebrities to their breaking points really make for good television, or had audiences grown weary of the spectacle? In the end, the moment became bigger than either man. It sparked think pieces, conversations on morning news shows, debates across dinner tables. It forced a reckoning in late-night circles, where producers began re-evaluating how interviews were structured, what lines shouldn't be crossed. Will Smith, ever the Phoenix, used the controversy as a springboard. His film gained traction, bolstered by the attention, and his message of setting boundaries resonated with a wide audience. He began speaking publicly about mental health, about authenticity, about redefining masculinity, not just through stoicism, but through emotional honesty. Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel's show saw a dip in ratings, a temporary PR crisis, and a moment of introspection. Whether it changed him for good remains to be seen. But what's undeniable is that the night Will Smith walked off that stage, something shifted. This wasn't about a slap, or a meme, or even an argument. It was about humanity. It was about two men with vastly different worldviews colliding under hot lights and louder applause. It was about the limits of performance, the cracks in the facade, the invisible weight celebrities carry every day they step into the public eye. Will Smith, no longer just the fresh prince or the action hero, or the charming interview guest, had peeled back the layers. What emerged was someone flawed but evolving, wounded but learning. And in doing so, he reminded the world that growth often comes in the most uncomfortable of moments. He may have walked off a talk show stage, but in the eyes of many, he walked into something far more profound: his truth.